In the first part of our series on parsnip wine, we showed you how to harvest the parsnips, prepare them, get a must fermenting. In today's video, what we're going to do is show you how to finish that process from the fermenting must in the bucket all the way through to bottling. So stay with us for a hidden gem of country wine. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the garden on a bit of a rare sunny spring day that I'm outside enjoying. Welcome to part 2 of our series on making parsnip wine. I promise you, parsnip wine is a hidden gem of country wines. It's a beautiful colour, it's a fabulous flavour, and honestly, I don't know why it's not more popular than elderflower wine. It really does taste incredible. In part 1 of this series, we showed you how to harvest and prepare the materials to make the wine. If you haven't watched that, I'll pop a link somewhere up above. And please go and watch that one first, because in today's episode, what we're going to show you is how to finish that off once the initial violent fermentation is finished, how to get it into a demijohn, then how to get it clear, how to bottle it, and how to lay that down ready for these lovely warm summer's day to come. Let's get on. Up until today, every time I stirred the wine, I get a violent fizzing sound and lots of bubbles, a bit like I'm stirring Coca-Cola. Today, it's just like stirring, well, from the look of it, tea, but don't worry about that colour. Now, what that tells us is the primary fermentation, the initial violent fermentation, is over. So we've lost any risk of our wine foaming through an airlock. So what we need to do now, filter off all the solids, transfer the wine to a demijohn and fit it with an airlock. The next job, to get the wine out of this big fermenting bucket and into a demijohn. And we want to remove all the solids while we do that. Now, I do that in 2 steps. I think with filtration, if you try and do it in 1 step, you just clog whatever you're filtering through. And when I say filter, I mean sieve or bit of cloth. So I'm going to filter it once to get the big lumps of raisins and what have you out. And I'm going to do that with a sieve. Then I'm going to filter it a second time through some cloth to get out any fine material. The process dead simple. Get a funnel, stick it in the demijohn. Then we get a sieve, we stick that in the funnel. Then we pour the wine with a jug, just scoop it up out the bucket, pour it through the sieve into this demijohn. Then I clean out the sieve, put a bit of cloth inside it, a bit of cheesecloth, a bit of muslin. If you haven't got any of those things, an old tea towel or a pillowcase, line the sieve with it, then filter it again through that cloth, and that'll get rid of any of the fine materials. Let's show you how that works. We've ended up with what appears to be a demijohn of milky weak tea. Don't worry about the cloudiness, don't worry about the colour. That will come right, I promise you. Next job then is to take a second demijohn, filter it again, but through a cloth to get rid of the fine particles. After a second filter, it still looks entirely like milky tea. We can't get rid of all the solids at this stage because as the yeast is fermenting, it's also reproducing, and that creates more solids in your wine that will have to be removed at the end of the process. But we've got out a lot of it, and that's great. I've fitted an airlock, and the purpose of an airlock is to keep out bad things like vinegar flies that if they get into your wine will spoil it, but also to allow gas to escape, so the gas can pass through the S-bend of the airlock and get out. If it didn't, this vessel would pressurise and ultimately explode. So you can't tightly cork something that's fermenting because of the build-up of gas. But that gas really helps us as homebrewers, because as long as bubbles are passing through the airlock, we know that fermentation is still happening. Fermentation will cease when all the sugar has been consumed and turned to alcohol, or that the alcohol level has built up so much in your wine that it kills off the yeast. One of those two scenarios. In the recipe we're using here, it'll be when all the sugar has been consumed and turned to alcohol. So I'm going to put this demijohn now somewhere nice and warm, and I'll keep an eye on it, and when bubbles stop passing through the airlock, it's reasonable for me to assume that fermentation is complete. Hi. Well, for you, no time at all has passed. For us, about 10 days has gone by and our secondary fermentation is complete. Our wine has stopped bubbling and is starting to clear. I'll bring you in close in a minute and you can have a look. But after a morning of transplanting tomatoes, I've got a quick job to do today, and that is to rack the wine off. And all that means is to siphon it carefully into a clean demijohn, leaving behind the sediment. Because eventually we're going to want to bottle it, and we don't want to do that with the sediment all stirred up. So today we're going to look at racking off. Come and have a look at the wine first. So here's our wine. You can see it's already starting to clear. It's got a lovely colour to it. But at the bottom, you can see there's a layer of sort of greyish brown material, and that's spent yeast and parsnip and other vegetable material that, since the CO2 is no longer rising, is gradually settling out. You can also see, if I put my hand behind it, the wine is not completely clear. It still has a haze. So what we need to do is rack it off, siphon it off very carefully without disturbing this sediment into a clean demijohn, and then complete the clearing process. This is a wine siphon. You can siphon with anything. Any bit of rubber tubing, any bit of silicone tubing, doesn't matter. This just makes the job a little bit easier, and it costs like a couple of quid. So it's got some flexible tubing. It's got a solid piece here that's deep enough that you can poke the end down to the bottom of your demijohn. It's got a tap to control whether it flows or not. And what's really weird is the bottom is solid, but the wine can get into that little cup on the bottom. And what that means is, if you've got a layer of sediment down here, it is much less likely to get sucked up that pipe. And that makes clearing your wine quite a bit easier. At this stage, you're probably going to have to very gently tilt the top demijohn, because otherwise it won't make it over that little cup on the bottom of the siphon. And you want to get all the wine, even if you have to take the risk of getting a tiny amount of sediment. And I hope you can see there that we got all the wine, we didn't get the sediment. That's the process of racking off. That's all it is, and that's all that's necessary to clear a lot of wines. So we've racked it once now. If we leave it another week or two, more matter will settle out. It'll gradually settle out from suspension. Then when we've got another 1/4 inch, 6 or 7 mil, I'll rack it again, and then probably leave it a little bit longer until it's absolutely crystal clear. Rack it a final time, leaving the last of the sediment behind, and it's ready for bottling. Now, if you've got a stubborn wine, or if you're in a hurry, having done the first racking, you can use a product called Finings. Finings is just 2 little bottles of liquid. What you do is you put 1/2 teaspoon, a couple of mil of the first liquid into your wine, give it a stir or a swirl, mix it up, leave it for 30 minutes, put 1/2 teaspoon of the second one in, give it another swirl. And those 2 liquids acting together will cause any sort of suspended matter to clump together and settle out more quickly. It's not necessary for a lot of country wines because they'll do it anyway. This one's clearing beautifully, but it's worth knowing about the technique just in case yours has been a bit stubborn or if you're in a bit of a hurry. For me, with this parsnip wine, I'll keep it as simple as possible. So all I'm going to do with that is put it somewhere quiet for a couple of weeks and rack it again till it goes nice and clear. Look at that. That sediment settled out absolutely beautifully. So I'm going to rack it off just a final time to make sure we don't stir up any of that sediment while we bottle it. Here's the wine after that last racking, and I wanted to show you this close up so you can see my fingers wiggling through the wine. That's the clarity that I want from our country wines. That sort of murky nonsense that some people produce is not for me. I think country wines are fantastic, they're flavourful, they're interesting, but they need to be produced to a high standard. And if I can't get my wine that clear through racking, I'm going to use something like this. This is a Vinbright wine filter, and it's like a thick pad of paper inside. You run the wine through it, it removes any particulates. And I'm not frightened to use filters or finings where a wine is difficult to clear, because I want a really nice end product. And we've got one here without them, but I'm not scared to use them when I need to. Well, that wine's beautifully clear. We didn't need to use finings. We didn't need to use a wine filter. I often do, and as I say, not afraid to use them. Now on to the next topic that's a little bit contentious. We've got to get the wine into the bottles. Some people will tell you to very carefully trickle the wine down the sides of the bottles using a siphon, because oxygenization of the wine is a real problem. To be honest, I think in all the racking off we've done, we've introduced loads of oxygen into the wine anyway. And all I do is use a funnel and pour it from the demijohn into the bottles. People will scream at me and tell me it's the death of good wine. 40 years of winemaking, it's never caused a problem, but opinions vary, and if you want to try using the siphon method, please do. But whichever method you use, we need to get that wine into the bottles. So we've got our wine in the bottles. Now, a quick word on bottles. What do you want? Do you want to go screw top? Do you want to go corking? I would advise go one way or the other, because a mix of the two can be very awkward to manage. Increasingly, a lot of wine is sold in screw top bottles, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to use screw tops, you can get really good quality replacement screw tops these days, and use the same bottle but replace the caps. And I would advise doing that, because otherwise you're going to risk all your effort to reusing the old screw top. Air gets in and the wine gets ruined, and nobody wants that. I'm old. I use corks in my wine, and we use the proper bottles for corks. Don't try and ram corks into screw top bottles, because of the nature of the threading of the screw top. The neck is weaker and they can shatter as you push a cork in. So you either go the cork way, screw top way, up to you which you prefer. We're going the cork way, and we use a corking gun. It's like a double lever device that pushes the cork into the neck under pressure, ensuring an airtight seal. Let's have a look at how that works. This is a corking gun. It has two levers and a ram in the middle. And as you pull the levers down, the ram here descends, pushes a cork out the bottom into the neck of the wine bottle. So you start there, here's your cork, drops into the chamber. You seat the bottom of the corking gun on the neck of the wine bottle, and then you pull the two levers down. This you can just see here, the ram is descending as I pull the two levers down. I have to put a little bit of force on now. And in that scenario, with the levers horizontal, the cork is fully seated in the neck of the bottle. And there it is. That's a sealed bottle of wine. And honestly, that's all you need to do. Put a label on it so that you know what it is in a year's time. There is one other thing I like to do, which I think improves the look and improves the seal. And I use these things called shrink caps. And what you do, pop one on the neck of the bottle, plunge that neck and the cap into boiling water, and it shrinks and grips the neck of the bottle. Gives you a complete seal and a nice professional looking finish. All you need, pan of boiling water, dip the bottle with the shrink cap on, turn it round if it's not fully submerged, and you get a beautiful professional looking seal. I just want to show you that wine. I want to take 1 second to show it to you. Look how clear that is. That's what we're looking for. That's what a good country wine should look like. None of this murky nonsense. That's parsnip wine. Look at it. It's deep, it's buttery, it almost has a hint of vanilla in it and oak. Really like a Chardonnay is the best way I can describe it, but a good Chardonnay with depth of flavour. It sounds unappealing, parsnip wine, but anyone who's had it and who's had a good glass of it will tell you it really is a cracking country wine. Give it a try, find out for yourself. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you'd like to see more on country wines, for example, the Blackberry Port that we keep threatening to film for you, let us know in the comments. And if you want to see those and every other video we do, bang on that subscribe button down there and the little bell notification icon next to it. You'll hear every time we upload a new video. But whatever you do, come back and see us soon. Take care.